Good morning, everyone. We really do appreciate all of you that came out on this wonderful day. We've been given the honor and privilege of having one of our provosts to bring greetings from the leadership. And I'd like to welcome Dr. Gabby McClutchin, Provost of Arts and Sciences.
The third choice is me. Good morning. Welcome to the Spring 2024 Professional Learning Day. Mother Nature has arranged a perfect day for us to be indoors, sharing ideas with each other and learning from each other. So I'm particularly interested in learning from all of you and with you about how artificial intelligence, large language models, and machine learning are changing the work of teaching and learning. We remain committed to improving our graduation rates from the 26% of degree, diploma, and certificate students who graduate from Wake Tech in 4 years. And we continue on our journey to transform ourselves and Wake Tech from focusing on whether students are college ready to making sure that we are student ready. Again, welcome to the Spring 2024 Professional Learning Day. I look forward to learning with you. Let me turn it over to Tanya, I think.
Thank you so much, Gabby. Thank you. And you were not the third choice. Yes. Well, good morning. I'm Tanya Green. I serve as the director for the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. It's great to see all of your faces this morning. We have a really robust schedule today, and we have so much talent at Wake Tech. I'm just amazed what I get to learn from each and every one of you. And I'm not going to take too much of your time because I want us to be able to get to an amazing keynote today. We are blessed to have Brittany Hochstaetter with us today, and she's going to deliver our keynote. And just to tell you a little bit about Brittany, do we have any communications folks in the audience today? Can y'all raise your hand? All right. She's got her people here. Okay. A little bit about Brittany Hochstaetter. She's a professor of communication in the Communication and Theater Department. Since joining the faculty in 2009, she has served in various roles, including administrative department head, online lead, and adjunct lead. She was Wake Tech's Instructor of the Year in 2022 and named a finalist for the North Carolina Community College System's Statewide Excellence in Teaching Award. An innovation enthusiast, she was a founding editor of the North Carolina Community College Journal of Teaching Innovation, an open access peer-reviewed journal serving North Carolina faculty. Since 2020, she has served on the board of directors for the Instructional Technology Council, an affiliated council with AACC. Her most recent publications have appeared in Community College Daily and the Journal of Instructional Technology. Will you please join me in welcoming Brittany Hochstaetter to the stage?
One of your own speaking today. So how do we stay connected to ourselves under stress? How do we stay human in extreme circumstances? In June 1965, 6 boys, ranging in ages from 13 to 16, found themselves a little bit like some of our students, completely bored out of their minds with school. They were attending St. Andrews, a very strict boarding school in the capital city of Tonga, an island in the South Pacific. So they devised a plan. They would borrow the fishing vessel of a local fisherman, and they would set sail to see the world, or at least try to make it to Fiji. They had the foresight to take a bag of bananas and some coconuts and a gas burner, but a compass and a map, that kind of slipped their minds. All was going pretty well until they fell asleep, and then they hit a storm. For 8 days, they drifted, unsure of where they were going to land or what was going to happen, until they spotted an island jutting more than 1,000 feet out of the ocean. They landed on the deserted island of Ada, which had been uninhabited since 1863. For more than 15 months, no one at the school at St. Andrews heard from these boys. They were considered lost at sea and completely gone. until enter Captain Peter Warner, a native Australian. He happened upon the island of Ada on a fishing expedition. That was in 1966. What he found was quite different than the 1951 Lord of the Flies novel that some of you might be thinking of. What happened there was pretty different. The captain wrote in his memoirs that he was astounded. He said, by the time I arrived, the boys had set up a small commune with food, a food garden, hollowed out tree trunks to store rainwater, a gymnasium with curious weights, a badminton court, chicken pens, a permanent fire, all from handiwork, an old knife blade, and much determination. Once the boys were able to spark a fire, they never let it go out in all the 15 months, despite the weather conditions. The kids agreed to work in teams of 2 in a strict rotation of kitchen, guard, and garden duty. And they imposed a rule that whenever people fought, the 2 squabblers had to go to opposite ends of the island and cool off for at least 4 hours and then come back and apologize. They agreed to begin and end every day with group song and prayer led by a handmade guitar using the steel from their fishing vessel. When they faced difficulty, and they did face difficulty, they stayed connected to each other through song, humor, story, and they fiercely took care of each other. This true story, which has never appeared in any Hollywood film, at least yet, appeared in the 2021 book, Humankind, A Hopeful History. The writer, Rutger Bregman, interviewed Captain Peter Warner for this book, and he discovered when he did that interview that the captain and the oldest of the 6 boys, his name is Mano, lived just a few miles apart, so it was pretty easy to interview them. They had shared a 50-year friendship. The captain, a community college graduate, by the way, had created jobs for all 6 of the boys following the rescue on his fishing vessel. Basically, he allowed the dreams of those boys to come true. They were able to see the world on his fishing vessel and not be bored by their assignments. This story fascinated me the first time I saw it in 2020 when the book was being promoted. I wanted to know, how does this happen? This story seems so otherworldly, so against what we might have expected to happen. How did these 6 kids keep going, stay connected to themselves, stay so grounded? I mean, they were facing incredible odds. This story felt very salient to me in 2020. And to be honest, when I thought of this keynote, it came back to me again in 2024. Why did this story come back in 2024? Forbes published an article 1 month ago entitled The Growing Discontent with American Education. Writer Brandon Bustede began the piece saying, there's a growing discontent with American education. You can sense it swelling like a big wave, evidenced in a mix of troubling stats and trends. Education futurist Brian Alexander, if you follow him, published a piece on March 1st entitled Starting 2024 with All Kinds of Academic Cuts. In it, he attempts to catalog and categorize the closing of entire colleges and programs and the elimination of jobs in our sector. He ends the piece by commenting, I also want to take time to track and share these stories because it seems to me that many discussions leave out the human toll of such costs. Cuts blight careers that cause emotional suffering. According to computer scientist and writer Cal Newton, you might recognize his name from the book Deep Thinking, he argues that society as a whole has transitioned from the Great Resignation to the Great Exhaustion. Maybe you are starting to feel some of this or relate to it. Maybe in the words of Bob Goff, some of us have started to lose our way while helping others find theirs. You know, as community college instructors, we don't often take time, or maybe to put it more bluntly, we don't often have time to consider our needs, our feelings at work or about work, right? Because we're so busy doing work. That's the community college reality. But maybe this image captures some of it. Maybe just a piece of it. You know, when Tanya asked me to do this keynote, I knew the answer would be yes. Who wouldn't want to do a keynote when faculty morale in all places in higher ed is this high? This is a dream gig for anyone, yes. But you know, who can say no to an offer that comes to you in one of these? You can't say no to this. This is an institution. You know, don't say we don't care about sustainable materials here. We've been in the business of reducing, reusing, and recycling with these since I was in middle school. Since this is one of the extremely rare times on a professional learning day that a keynote speaker has been chosen from within the faculty, that I'm very tempted to spend this time just sort of like giving some inside tips and tricks to the new faculty and making inside jokes. For example, if I just paused for a moment, where are the new faculty? In the last couple years, you've joined us new? Okay, we've got a few in here. Okay, so just like one little thing. If you see an email come through from Human Resources in the late afternoon advertising open positions, you know the one I'm speaking of, and you see it come through because as a faculty member, you're still working at that point. It's time to call it. You are the last one defending the castle. The rest of the faculty have gone, okay? All done. It's time to go. So let's take a few moments to express our facultiness, maybe just in a cleansing way. How many of you have taught on more than one campus? Okay. How many of you have gotten lost trying to drive from one campus to another? Okay. How many of you have admittedly not checked your mailbox in a while? Maybe because of that travel between campuses, okay? I won't ask how many of you don't know where your mailbox is. We'll leave that one out. How many of you have shown up to the wrong classroom to teach a class before? How many of you started out as adjuncts and are now full-time? Woo! Okay, good job. How many of you have parked in student parking due to an extenuating circumstance? Okay. Right, this is not punitive if you're a supervisor in the room. Okay, this is safe space. It is genuinely a unique thing to be a community college educator, something we don't reflect on enough. We are not like the others. When you compare us to the other North Carolina educators, we are different. We're incredibly unique in our calling and our mission. Community college founding father, if we had founding fathers, okay, so just consider that we might have founding fathers. Terry O'Banion, strongly connected to the League of Innovations, he wrote a great article in which he talked about the calling and mission of community college. He writes that community college was founded in America in 1902, and he called it a new experiment that gave birth to a truly American college, one that became known in time as Democracy's College or the People's College. In time, what we set up here in 1902 spread its unique commitment to open access and local community involvement. That model spread around the world. Definitely something to be proud of, that inherited legacy. Part of our struggle is definitely the state of education and the state of the community college and our local context, even here at Wake Tech. But we also face a second challenge, and that is teaching in the time of the advent of generative AI. It poses a challenge to the way we have taught our entire careers, right? And in some ways, it feels entirely foreign, and in some ways, that feels entirely new. The familiarity that we might feel is that when we're given an online class, what's the first thing we're told to do, right? Humanize it. Humanize the space. And when we're given a seated class, what are we told to do? Add tech to that. Put some tech in there, right? So we're trained for this push, this thrust forward. We're used to that. We're used to chasing that pressure to stay current. And we know that feeling. And we may even have genuine excitement about the possibilities that each piece of new software technology can bring to us. However, the exact nature of generative AI is a hydra. I mean, this is open source, closed source, for-profit, companion tech, all updating and evolving so quickly. I mean, there's a lot of heads to this monster. This is different than what we faced before. We might even feel a sense of nostalgia, or as Gabby said, a bit of grief for the days of what Langston Hughes described in this piece. The instructor said, go home and write a page tonight and let that page come out of you. Then I know it will be true. But how do we know that now, right? How do we know that page that student is writing is a piece of truth coming out of them? Are those days gone? It's not that we aren't prepared to learn something new. It's not that we aren't wanting to prepare our students for a future that's undoubtedly going to involve generative AI, but it's more than that. We have existential concerns, of course, but this is also a workplace concern for us. It's a stream flowing into a larger river of context for us. AI has changed the nature of our work, and it continues to. Will AI, as some of us are wondering, usher in more standardization and automation? Will it carry with it an expectation of more output or throughput? Some of us wonder, are we going to turn into the I Love Lucy episode when she's at the chocolate factory, just shoving the pieces of chocolate into her mouth as fast as she possibly can? Is that going to be us with the level of students we're going to have one day because of all of this efficiency that AI is going to bring to us? You know, these are thoughts that we may have. Writer Ben Williamson voiced these concerns in a piece that he published in late February. He said, AI reproduces a historical emphasis on efficiency and measurable results and outcomes, what he calls administrative progressivism that has characterized some school systems. There's also a concern that we have, can we keep up? Right? How do we compare in our abilities to ChatGPT? Will a student prefer the feedback from a flesh and blood instructor or the feedback it can capture from ChatGPT in a few seconds? Will it matter to the student? Brian Christian is a successful writer and a poet. He has degrees in computer science and philosophy that gives him a unique take on this subject. He wrote a book entitled The Most Human Human, What Artificial Intelligence Teaches Us About Being Alive. He wrote this in 2012, and it persists in its relevance over a decade later. I think its premise holds some hope for us as we face this challenge now. He writes, maybe it's not until we experience machines that we can appreciate the human. The inhuman has not only given us an appetite for the human, it's teaching us what it is. It's helping us to define what our humanity is and what it isn't. If that's true, helping us to appreciate the best of our humanity, then maybe the answer isn't only just focusing on skilling up our tech. Maybe focusing on our humanity is the practical response to this digital wave. The world is becoming more complex. In this exact moment that the world is becoming so complicated, we may feel pressured to all develop the same AI skills and kind of conform to more rigid formulas for successful teaching, when the most useful and practical response to this challenge is actually to look to our humanity, our curiosities, our whimsy, our desire to build and explore and experiment to become the greater, more beautiful machines. That sounds good, right? That sounds lovely, but how do you do that? How do we do that facing this challenge? Well, I think as educators, you always start with questions, right? So let's start with a question. How do you share who you are in the classroom? How do you bring your humanity into the class? Is it something you say? Is it something you show? Is it something you do, a habit? Maybe you share a hobby or a quirk. Maybe it's an assignment that discloses a bit of who you are. I'm just going to give you a couple moments to think about that, how you specifically share your humanity in the classroom, or how, if you're in a staff position or a leadership position, how you envision somebody could do that. And then I'd like you to take just a moment to turn and share that with one person beside you, or to discuss that topic, and then we'll come back together. Okay. Okay, I hate to cut off a discussion, but let's wrap it up. That's your 10-second warning. Okay, we got out a few of our words. That's good. So why does this matter? Why does it matter that we share who we are? Well, we know it's all about relationships, right? At the end of the day. But according to a study in 2016 and published in the Journal of Educational Psychology, when students were shown 5 areas of commonality with their instructors, not only were better relationships formed, but the course grades were improved and equity gaps were closed by 60%. But how do students find areas of commonality with us if we're not sharing ourselves with the students? If we're going to build common ground, we've got to share our ground. We can't give them a course that feels cold and robotic. We've got to share pieces of our humanity in order to build those bridges. Did anybody grow up watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood? Did anybody show Daniel Tiger to their kids? So I grew up in a pretty rural part of West Virginia, so rural, in fact, that our television antenna did not pick up public television, I have to say. I had to go to my grandma's house to watch Mr. Rogers on a television that was about this big. But I was into it. I mean, the trolley, the fish, the stoplight, the field trips, why he changed his shoes when he came in. I mean, I was into all of it. I was transfixed. It really got me. During COVID, I don't know if any of you saw this, but there were some memes and some short videos that circulated talking about how Fred Rogers was really the first successful virtual educator. And I think you could make a strong argument in many ways that he was. If so, I want to point out a few things. All of those seemingly random things that were part of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood were not so random. They were actually pieces of himself. The trips to the factories, for example, those field trips to see how things were made, were because his father owned factories growing up in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. And Mr. Rogers felt that it was very important that children see how things were made and that things had an origin, so that they took better care of things and they understood that people took time to put things together. Mr. McFeely, the mailman, was named Mr. McFeely because McFeely was his mother's maiden name. The emphasis on classical music was because Mr. Rogers went to college to study classical music and because he married a concert pianist, and he and she always had 2 pianos in their living room so that they could play piano together. The cardigan that he changed into at the beginning of the show was a nod to his mother, because he grew up watching his mother knit 1 sweater every month for somebody in need in his town. All of these little pieces of himself, his identity, his story, he didn't set out to explain these things. He designed his set, his learning space, with these things that reflected his humanity, and the warmth just conveyed on so many levels. We often can't design a physical classroom the way K-12 can, right? We may feel like, we're bereft of that opportunity, but we do have design choices within Blackboard. We have assignment choices. We have decisions we can make about our offices and our labs. We have more influence than we may realize. And who you are is incredibly essential to what you do. By sharing who we are, we give permission to our students to share who they are, to share their stories, and then collectively we come together to humanize our work. Second question, and I think this one actually sounds like something Mr. Rogers would ask. What is one place you visit or activity you engage in that grounds you and refreshes your sense of wonder? I know for Professor Kelly Markson, going to the Adirondack Mountains of New York refreshes her. I know for Professor Angela Smedley, it's taking a brisk walk outside, no matter the weather. I know for Professor Chad McKenzie, it's a mountain hike. I know for Professor Jessica Soto, it's traveling somewhere new and making those lessons come alive to her students. It can be many things. Maybe it's a particular place or something that you do, a ritual. But according to writer Winifred Gallagher, most of us have a special place or two that bring out special dimensions of ourselves, places that might provide an anchor or framework or entry point for our creativity. You know, joy has aesthetics, according to Ingrid Lee, author of the book Joyful. She writes that joy brings out creativity. And their aesthetics, the aesthetics of joy, speak to us even in unconscious levels. It really is all about creativity, right? In the age of AI. Melissa Wong wrote just this week, she's an analytics engineer for Stanford. She wrote just this week that AI demands creativity. In fact, she says creativity is the new imperative in the age of AI. So what can we be doing? What should we be doing? We should be doing the things that bring us joy. We should be fostering creativity in our own lives so that that becomes a spring to bring forth the creativity into what we do. I recently had my creativity piqued visiting one of the most unique places in New Orleans, a place called Preservation Hall. If you've never heard of it, has anybody ever been there? Okay, did not expect that. Very cool. In the heart of the French Quarter in New Orleans, in a dilapidated building that you'd walk right past in the daytime, sits Preservation Hall. 360 nights a year, you can hear jazz the way jazz started. Completely acoustic in a room that holds around 30 people, usually fewer people than our classrooms. You can pay one price to sit on a backless, hard wooden pew or another price to stand in the back. These 4 concerts a night, they're about 45 minutes each, they sell out weeks prior. The artists that you listen to, they basically decide their set list as you're sitting there. It's like decided completely on vibes. You know, what they feel like playing, what the crowd is feeling like, that it's really astounding. And there's no restroom in the building, there's no air conditioning, there's no refreshments, and there's no advertising or marketing other than their website. I mean, the music is transformational. It is really like set off in its own history. Preservation Hall was a rare space in the South in the 1960s where racially integrated bands and audiences shared music together in the Jim Crow era. And its owners were at times arrested for their civil rights work. They really tried to keep everything exactly as it was. They joke that somebody who tried to wash the windows once in the 70s was fired. Sitting there listening to this music, I was really transfixed by thinking about how this place had held on to its humanity and stayed grounded in 2024. And when I got back from the concert, I went to their website and I was blown away to find that Preservation Hall has the most remarkable catalog of open educational resources. Unbelievable to me. This place doesn't even have microphones. And here they are reaching out to the next generation with very sophisticated videos, worksheets aligned with national and state standards for educators to use. You don't often see a fusion of such humanity and connection to who you are, and yet a desire to use technology
to usher that into a new generation. What a metaphor. It's like Steve Jobs said once, technology alone is not enough. It's technology married with the liberal arts, married with the humanities, that yields us the results that makes our hearts sing.
Certain places we visit and activities we engage in boost our own creativity, ushering that energy and inspiration into our work. And as we push our creativity, our students are affected, and we naturally enjoy providing them spaces to display their work. Surprises also induce a little wonder. So if you want to just check your chair, somebody in here has a free recording of Preservation Hall's music. It's just one person, but somebody in here has, and if it's not your chair, oh, she found the label, but that wasn't it. Okay. Keep looking. I feel like it's in this zone, okay? I'll give you a tip. It's over here. If it's not your chair, it's the first one to it. It will be a surprise to someone. Oh, she found it. Good job. Last question. In what ways are we deepening our connections with others? Are we fostering human connections inside the classroom? You know, we could spend all day talking about ways that you all foster connections with your students, and I think that would be time well spent. Everybody has their own way of doing that. I started a new way that I do that to stay connected to them. So I don't know if you've seen these scratch-off maps, but by my desk, I have a world map, and every time a student tells me they're from a particular country, I scratch off that part of the world. It just is a reminder to me that what we do matters, and it's far-reaching, and it's just kind of cool. And maybe there are new ways that we can share with each other about how we stay connected to our students, even from far away. I think as a group of faculty, we do a phenomenal job of staying connected to our students and providing innovative ways to foster those connections. I mean, here is just a partial list of some of the things that we do to foster those connections. I mean, student to student, we give them ways to connect through group projects, discussion groups. We provide affinity spaces, spaces for them to interact as peers through tutoring and studying and in forums. We communicate their opportunities to get together outside of the classroom in clubs and activities and trips. Student to professor, we foster connections in how we speak to them, our responsiveness, sharing our bio in a very human, interactive way. We have small talk with them before and after class. We offer maybe drop-in times on Teams. There's all sorts of ways that we foster these connections. So what we're talking about today is instructor presence. It is student engagement. But that is essentially the cost of doing business yesterday. It's not the cost of doing business after generative AI. The cost of doing business now is higher. It's a higher cost of doing business. It used to ask of us that we do these things, and it still does. But generative AI is asking that we go beyond this, and we dig deeper into ourselves. And we ask ourselves, am I being a holistic human? And some of us are trying to do that by trying to learn as many technical skills as we can to grab control of that. And that's not a bad response. It's a good response. But I think it's only one response. Sometimes I've heard this at Wake Tech. Have you heard this phrase, opportunity for improvement? If you're new to Wake Tech, maybe you haven't heard that yet. I think our opportunity for improvement might be, I think we could do better with fostering connections faculty to faculty, staff to staff, staff to faculty, faculty to staff. I think that is one area that we could use improvement, because if we are going to do that bigger thing of becoming ourselves, we're going to need each other, and we're going to need to lean on each other's strengths. And I think we're going to have to advocate for this. I think we're going to have to ask for this. And I think this is going to naturally come to us. I think if we want to work on more interdisciplinary projects and we're going to serve on more committees outside of our department or do more projects that are even outside of our college, we are going to have to fight for that. We're going to have to ask for that. And we're going to have to work towards it incrementally sometimes. But I think as that cost gets higher, it is going to take more of us coming together to accomplish that. Simon Sinek argues in his book, Leaders Eat Last, that the strength and endurance of a company does not come from the products and services, but from the people pulling together. And that's essentially what it's going to take for us to do this. Innovation and creativity always require coming together. So now coming to the next slide, I asked ChatGPT what our coming together looked like. I specifically prompted it, what does North Carolina Community College faculty look like? So this is what ChatGPT thinks you look like, which is not terrible until you look at it a little longer. It's these images are a little bit like the highlights issue at the dentist office growing up, where the longer you look at it, the more it gives. So I was not entirely, ChatGPT just really struggles with human eyes and hands, I'll say. But I wasn't entirely satisfied with this image, so I asked it for a more specific prompt. I said, but I want to know what North Carolina Community College faculty looks like in Raleigh, North Carolina during March Madness. And so ChatGPT said, it assured me that this image denoted our particular culture and this moment. So this is what I think the polar bear really conveys our culture in Raleigh. And I just want to wish you all a happy Marquee Martleness. There are several people missing some limbs in this photo. We may wonder or worry about AI creativity. I think some of that is granted, right? Like there have been things created by Dolly and using these programs that have been good. I don't know that this is an example, but we may worry that AI pseudo-creativity is taking over our territory because AI programs have won some literature awards and photography awards in the last 6 months. But I love what writers McCool and Dede explained in an article about AI creativity in the last month. They said human creativity is the sun and AI creativity is the moon. The moon will always be a reflection and not the source of humanity's light. I think it's tempting to lose our importance in the new world, but community college instructors have been instrumental in creatively and innovatively educating in the People's College since 1902. I mean, this is our inherited legacy. Creativity is a form of optimism that more can be done, according to Wallace Nichols. That sure sounds like us, right? The builders and the doers that we are. Those boys on the island of Ada, how did they stay together? How did they stay human? They remembered who they were. They solved problems together. They gave space to their values and their purposes. They were highly protective of their connections with each other. We can do that. To conclude, and I know that it's time to conclude because I asked ChatGPT what you would look like when it was time to conclude. So I'm just matching faces here. My last question comes from a very famous, best-selling teacher, if you will. Are you trying to be the best human you can be? Simple but profound. I think that is the most essential question. and probably the new life's work for any teacher. Thank you.